the work that we do throughout pregnancy from a movement standpoint is to help us make sure we have access to these different movements. It's not to practice exactly what you're going to do in labor, right? Because again, that's taking us too much out into thinking. And so I love it when a client emails me after they've given birth and they go, oh, we practice all these movements. I knew all these different things I could do. And they'll say, I really did none of those things. And I'm going, yay, fantastic. You were in a balanced state. Your body was moving the way it was meant to move. And baby had a nice, easy journey through that process. Like that's the, the goal.
To the podcast. I'm Tracy Donegan. Today I'm speaking with Hayley Kava, a pelvic floor physical therapist and postural restoration certified provider. Hayley also shares her experiences today using GentleBirth for her second pregnancy and birth, planning an intentionally slow postpartum, and her GentleBirth prep for Hayley's upcoming birth. And now I bring you Hayley Kava.
Hi, everybody. You're very welcome to the next episode of my podcast. And today I am delighted to welcome Hayley Kava, who is currently in Kansas City, Missouri, but has quite a varied background when it comes to travel. And she's going to tell us more about her why she's traveling and has been traveling so much. But Hayley, you're very welcome. I'm delighted to chat to you. And I know we've kind of connected because you joined our instructor program, and I'm always interested to find out why people join the GentleBirth instructor program, and usually it's because they've had a great experience themselves, and I really want to share that love for positive birth. So tell us a little bit about your background and how you found your way to GentleBirth.
Yeah. So I'm Hayley. I jokingly will sometimes say I was a reluctant pelvic floor physical therapist, and that's not where I maybe saw my career going. When I was first entering the profession, I was a collegiate athlete and worked my career in sports medicine with high performance athletes, and then my own journey into motherhood. My own pelvic floor issues really opened my eyes to the fact that how we have so many advancements in understanding of sports injuries and rehab, that aspect of rehab world. But then, and I'm delivering this care to people of all different levels, and then I experience a pelvic floor injury from my birth, and I'm prescribed Kegels and don't do any of the things that you love to do anymore. But after a prolapse diagnosis, and I was like, hold on here, what is going on? And then that's really what kind of sparked my passion for just understanding every single thing that I possibly could about the pelvic floor, how it works in system, how it works in the whole body, and how can we improve the care that women are getting postnatally as well as perinatally. And then really through that journey and process of flipping my whole career from working with people who were athletes and military athletes to exclusively with the pelvic floor, what I also realized was that and I had experienced quite a lot of what I would describe as birth trauma and obstetric violence through that first birth process, because I was really unprepared for the process period. Absolutely not prepared from a mental standpoint, not prepared from an advocacy standpoint, and that I just assumed like, oh, I'm healthy, I'm young, I'm fit, I'll be able to just roll up, pop this baby out and we'll be good to go. And that's not the case, right? So I think what I learned in that whole process of trying to understand, okay, what just happened to me? Why did this happen to me? And how am I recovering? It didn't make sense for that whole process to exclusively be about my muscles and my bones and my breathing and my pelvic floor contraction. What I really learned was that there was so much more to it than just that. Although that's a big part of what I do, And that, I don't know exactly what first kind of introduced me to GentleBirth and the GentleBirth app, but I knew that in order to get my head right, I was working so hard on getting my body recovered. Really wanted to have a bigger family than just one baby. Um, and I had been listening to different like birth podcasts. Maybe it might have come up on like, some of my podcast listening. And I downloaded the app and started doing all the different tracks and affirmations and hypno birthing tracks. And it was like this huge shift of like, there are so many physical components about this. There's so much information that I can have. But if I can't get my mind right in this process, it's not all gonna come together. And so I really felt like that was a huge, huge part of my whole second, like, trying to conceive, pregnancy journey. And that was also during like peak COVID, right? So I found out I was pregnant with my second in January of 2020. And like everybody else, had no clue what was about to happen. And having had a really difficult experience with my first, I knew I had to take a whole lot more control because it was really scary for pregnant people at that time. We didn't know if they were going to take our babies away from us. We didn't know if we were going to be alone in the hospital. And I think maybe we used to talk about this a little bit more, but I think the collective trauma that a lot of pregnant people faced at that time was really challenging. And I'm so grateful that I had the GentleBirth app through that experience as like this constant support of like, okay, I'm going to control all the controllables. I'm going to be able to regulate my nervous system through this, no matter what happens. And that regulation of a system was also really helpful for helping body feel better, because those two things really are not different. And so, I used that really throughout my entire second pregnancy. Had a birth doula, did all the planning, all of the preparation, and had really really the picture of what I wanted my second birth to be like in my head. Sort of the goal, dream, imagery experience that I wasn't really telling anybody that I wanted to have, because I didn't want, but was constantly kind of reviewing in my mind, was really exactly how it went. And so after that moment, I was like, I think in terms of me professionally as a physical therapist, me personally as someone who had gone through this, it just really reinforced how much of an advocate and how much I wanted to use my voice to help people know that they can have these really beautiful, amazing experiences. And I know it to be true because I've lived it and seen it come to fruition. Funny little story about my second birth is that my two boys are about almost exactly 3 years apart. So my due date was the beginning of October, but my entire pregnancy, I had told my 2.5-year-old, the baby's coming after your birthday, right? Couple weeks after your birthday, but to him it was going to come right after his birthday. And so we had a little COVID backyard little party for him, and we had a bouncy thing for the little kids to jump on. And I felt great. I was about 38 weeks. I felt amazing. I was bouncing on the bouncy house. And after the party, we're cleaned up, we get to bed, and I roll over in bed and my water breaks. And I was like, this baby's been listening to me this entire pregnancy, because this baby heard me this whole time say, you can come after the birthday. And he did. And so it was just a fun, like, oh, I've been speaking this whole pregnancy, and he listened. So I really, because my water had broken, but I just, everything was fine. I labored at, or I really didn't, labor didn't really begin for about 20 hours. I was getting a little nervous, and so I dry needle, so I was needling myself in different points. I was using my breast pump just to see, okay, can I get this going at home before having to go in? And then labor did eventually kick off, and just used my tracks throughout pregnancy or throughout early labor, and then yeah, it really was quite peaceful in terms of being able to rest and just move intuitively with my body. And then I was kind of in that labor zone. Then there was this moment of like clarity of like, if I don't go right now, I don't think I'm gonna go. And so literally I started walking to the my doula was like, let's take 3 contractions to get to the car. And I was like, after the first contraction, I could feel like baby was, coming. And I was like, we're not taking 3 contractions to get to the car. But that was intense. So the intensity came when I was in transition, or, baby's crowning essentially, and we were in the car. And I think that could have been a really stressful moment. But I don't even remember the track, honestly, that was playing, but there was something in the track that talked about just letting your body go loose and limp. And in between those contractions, just letting myself go completely loose and limp, even though every other part of me wanted to be really tight in between those contractions, was really something that I don't think I would have been able to tap into had I not been practicing that really consistently throughout pregnancy. And so we rolled up, I climbed up on the bed, and the baby was born. so it was really, it was really, I could not have asked for anything better. And I'm actually in my first trimester with my 3rd pregnancy now, and we're planning on having a home birth this time, because I was like, well, what was the most stressful piece of that experience was leaving the house. And so that's our planning for this time, and I'm really excited about that. Yeah.
It is so interesting that over the years I've heard many a birth story of roadside births, GentleBirth roadside births, and I think for anyone who's listening or watching, it is almost like it's kind of a what I call nightmaring your birth experience. Like if that's what you're focused on, and that can be really stressful if you're thinking, oh, imagine if the baby came in the car, and we see these videos on YouTube. But what we've experienced with the gentle birth moms is they get to a point where they realize, okay, baby's coming. I have a choice, and I can, really like lose it and this and have no control over what's happening, or I can at least take control of my mindset. Still can't control what's happening, but I'll be in a different place and be able to think a little bit more clearly. So I'm in Austin, and we've had a brilliant birth story. I think it's actually on the Birth Hour podcast of a mom it sounds like something from a Hollywood movie, that she's sitting on a birth ball in the back of a van on the way to the birth center, and the baby comes on the way. And in Dublin, then I remember years ago we had a baby born on the side of the M50. Now the M50 is kind of like our biggest motorway in the country, very busy. But again, she got to a point where she's like, well, this is the hand we've been dealt, so I can control how I respond to this, and we're going to respond in a more positive way than that nightmaring. So I think for anyone who's listening, if that's on your mind, you have a choice. You can prepare differently for birth, so that no matter what happens on the day, you can actually collect yourself and think differently and respond differently. Because our go-to when we're stressed is a default to patterns of thought and patterns of behavior that would have been part of our childhood. So it's very easy to just fall back into that. But oftentimes that is into fight or flight, where you hear those words, when I got to the hospital, or when this happened, everything went out the window. Gentle birth gives moms a chance to pause and not let everything go out the window. So to ground yourself, collect yourself, and bring that executive functioning back
Yeah.
online, which
Yeah.
is which when you're talking about, it sounds very theoretical, but when you're in a challenging situation, to have that skill to recenter yourself is just priceless, I think, especially in labor, because it can be unpredictable.
Hey there, if you're enjoying this conversation and are passionate about evidence-based care in labor, the best way to support our work is to subscribe and share this episode with other amazing women in your life. Your support is so important to us and helps us reach more mothers with empowering content. So go ahead, hit that subscribe button and spread the love.
But I do love that like you're knowing walking to the car that okay,
Yeah, well,
baby may decide to come.
I had squatted down. I had kind of come into a squat during the last contraction before getting into the car, and I could feel the shift. I could feel like, ooh, or I didn't know it was a boy, but they're coming. Like it's happening, and I wasn't overly panicked, but I knew, okay, we gotta go. And so I didn't say anything to anyone that I was feeling this, also feeling like I should be pushing, or like my body was starting to do that. And so I didn't say anything until maybe two contractions down the road. We're on this like dark country road, and I tell my husband, I go, the baby's coming. Like I can feel the baby's coming. And so he starts to pull over, and I was like, no, like, don't pull over. Keep driving, because whether you like, if you stop, it's definitely happening in the car. And so yeah, it was that. It really, I'd say I was very, my mind was like very calm, confident throughout that whole labor. And it is really that at that moment where I was able to switch from sort of non-thinking, maybe older brain, to a bit more of a conscious brain moment, and stay rational and stay reasonable, and still feel in control of that scenario. And another thing that I really loved about that experience is that there wasn't really any talk about that it shouldn't be painful, or that it shouldn't be there wasn't any suggestions on like how we shouldn't be necessarily silent, or we shouldn't be quiet, because a big thing that I was personally working on through my first birth versus my second was my ability to use my voice in a medical environment, and be vocal and take up space, and advocate better for myself. Whereas I think previously I'd been, oh, doctors know best, and I can't speak up, and I'm going to just do what they say to make them happy. And so I was extraordinarily vocal throughout my entire birth, loud, and in control, and loud and noisy through contractions, because that's like, it was such, it felt really good. It felt really good to vocalize, and I wasn't embarrassed about that, and I felt really good about that. And I think that was a cool aspect of it that I really liked, was that I can express myself in ways that feel good, and that yeah, that was really just empowering and cool to be able to labor in the way that felt really good.
And it's interesting. I wonder if part of that, feeling the comfort of being able to vocalize and be yourself, is that some of it was maybe making up for what happened in the first birth, where you felt like you didn't have a voice. So it's like, well, I'm using it, and we're going to turn up the volume this time.
Yeah, I had heard something somewhere that, yeah, the baby hears you, and when you're in labor, the noises that you're making are kind of calling them. And so I would, if it was like through a contraction, using the word like it would come out like ow, and then I would turn it into out, like, you need to come out, I'm telling you now, you need to come out. And so it was like just everything kind of shifted in terms of the communication and the confidence, and all of that. And when I arrived, I knew I was 10 centimeters. The fetal ejection reflex was just happening, and I was just going with it. And it was a midwife group, but the midwife wanted to make sure I was complete. and wanted me to get onto my back on the table. And I was like, can you, and I think I had rehearsed this so many times. I was like, can you catch my baby in this position? Or no, and then can you check my cervix in this position? I'm sitting all fours on hands and knees. I'm like, it's right there. You can do it. And she was like, oh yeah. And I was like, okay, great, go for it. And so even that, like that ability to um, not give in and not just be easy and do the thing that someone is asking you to do was a huge, like, just personal victory of like, yeah. So it was great.
Yeah, it really is phenomenal to be able to, like, at that point when like you're feeling the fetal ejection reflex, baby's just coming, to
Mm-hmm.
have to like, interact and have a conversation about having a vaginal exam. I think it's just, but to still have that focus and clarity to know what you wanted, and
Mm-hmm.
not, because the easier thing would be to just at that point, yeah,
Exactly.
whatever, do whatever you need to do. But the fact that you were so in control, that you had that clarity of thought to say, no, I know what I want,
Mm-hmm.
and to be able to have that discussion at that point is amazing.
Yeah, and I think again through that it was just, yeah, taking having that ownership, having that control, having that conscious thought, and as a my pelvic floor physio brain at that point was like, okay, Haley, you're gonna just exhale through your pushes. You're gonna, your down arrow breathing that you've been practicing, and um, as I could feel him kind of getting closer and closer in my mind, I was like able to make this rational decision of like, I could do this and no, there was no coach pushing, but I could do this in like 3 or 4 pushes really gently, or I could get this done in like 1 or 2 and kind of close my glottis a little bit. And it was funny, I was like, it felt really good to make the conscious decision of I'm actually going to kind of close my throat here a little bit because I just want this to be done now. And afterwards, I was sort of thinking through that of like, oh, I had a small tear, and in my head afterwards, I was like, you know what? I'm not mad about that. I feel really good about that. I feel really good that that was true mother-led pushing. That was
Mhm.
me getting to make that decision of, do I want to take this a little slower over a few contractions? No one was telling me what to do. And I knew the risks, benefits, alternatives, in front of me,
Yeah.
and made the choice that I did. And so that was also is something that has really um, impacted how when I'm working with clients on birth prep is having this conversation about it's really about birther led pushing, is that you get to know all of these different strategies. We're going to practice all of these different strategies, and then in this moment, you really get to be the one to decide, because you're also in communication with the baby and what the baby needs and what you need. And yeah, and so that was just another moment of like, yeah, being able to make an informed choice, and that felt really good. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, interesting. That's because it's a point that I've talked to my own doula clients about this as well, and in the gentle birth class is about, at this point in labor where you feel like baby's just about to be born, you're going to have, like the old Tom and Jerry cartoons. You have the little devil on one shoulder going,
Yeah.
oh, just push, get it over with, and you're going to have my voice on the other side going, nice and slow, just breathe the baby out. But at the end of the day, it get like, you're the one in your body, so
Yeah.
you have to make the choice that's gonna feel right for you, and that is like the epitome of like, yeah, everyone else in the room can have an opinion, but you're in your body and you're feeling that baby move down. So like that is mother-led pushing at its best, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And uh, really that moment of, yeah, there's maybe some, ring of fire feeling. There's this intensity building, and this conscious shift of like, I need to go through this. I know I could pull away from this. I know I could dissociate from this, but also being able to stay with it and go kind of through to the other side of that. And I think that's a big coaching piece that I like to give with clients, even in regards to like perineal stretching, is like, it's just having this practice, this mental practice of hitting the edge of something that's uncomfortable, hitting the edge of something that I don't love. Nobody, you know what I mean? But can I get to a place where I can move through that without fear, without tensioning my body, and acknowledge that this is a part of the process, possibly. Right?
Yeah, and that's so, I mean, it is just what you've experienced. It's such a big part of mindfulness. So it's because no, I'd say a lot of us, most people, we try to avoid discomfort, and that's just a normal, natural human, phenomena that we are, we avoid discomfort, we move towards things that are enjoyable and comfortable. But if we never learn to sit in discomfort, and it's coming. So if you've led a charmed life and have never had any real discomfort, emotional discomfort in your life, or physical discomfort, you're gonna meet it at some point, So, and especially if you can sit with that feeling, because one thing that I've learned so well with mindfulness is that nothing lasts. So that feeling, as intense as it feels in this moment, if we can just be with it, if we can be curious about it, it will transform and it will change. But we're so averse to anything uncomfortable that we've really lost the skill, if we ever really had it, to actually be in the moment with that discomfort or that pain, and change our relationship with it. That if this has to be here, then I need to find a way to be okay with it being here. But I know it's going to change. Like if you think back, 5 years ago, to a time when you were really, really, really stressed over something that felt huge at the time, and now you look back and you're thinking, oh, well, it wasn't a little different when I look back on it now, and just how our feelings and emotions change, and especially when we're going through pregnancy and birth. So I'm interested, how was your pelvic floor after the second experience?
Yeah, it was awesome. So the I really had a whole different well first I had my so I was about a year and a bit postpartum, and I was feeling with my first, and I was feeling okay, but my husband had a deployment coming up, so we kind of had a decision to make. Was, do we try to have this second baby, get pregnant, and then when you come back we'll have another baby, or do we wait till you get back from this 6-month deployment? And I really didn't feel ready from a pelvic floor standpoint, mental standpoint, emotional standpoint at that point. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to take these 6 months. I'm going to get as strong as I possibly can in all of these different areas. And then when you get back, then we'll plan. So I had been actually feeling really good and really taking that time to sort of optimize my system. And so was asymptomatic and felt really great throughout that pregnancy. Again, despite not being, not having the gym, and just moving at home, and having, being home with my other child. And so, but I had a whole plan in place for this sort of postpartum, this slow postpartum. Part of my issue with my first was I basically started running like 4 weeks postpartum, because I had a ton of anxiety, a ton of probably trauma, and that just felt like the only way I could cope with it. And so that was a lot of strain, stress on my system before I was really ready to tolerate that. So I had this whole plan set up for my second, and really my prolapse and healing was significantly easier, and I was really tempted to get back into doing the things, but I kind of stuck to it. And I would say I had maybe a couple weeks of a little bit of rectocele symptoms, so a little bit of issue with emptying bowels, and that kind of concerned me because I hadn't had any issues with rectocele after my first, and then just kept stuck to the plan, kind of kept it progressive, and really my bladder symptoms and my cystocele symptoms were never showed up. And I think that was also a really big moment for me professionally, also to be like, oh, what the research says is that this is just going to continue to get worse the more children that we have. But there isn't a lot of research on looking at, well, what happens when we properly rehabilitate people who experience these injuries, and how do we support them optimally through pregnancy? What are things that we can do through their labor and their birth to minimize further injury, and then optimizing that recovery. And I would say it's been a non-issue ever since he was born, aside from those week of some foul stuff. And so I feel really, as difficult as that first experience was, I'm grateful for that experience, and that it's shaped who I am and how I do what I do, and has allowed me to meet a lot of amazing people and be a part of something that is really special to me. Yeah.
That's fantastic. And it's so interesting. A podcast that we just published this week with another GentleBirth mom who'd had quite a difficult experience with her first as well. And like I do hear it fairly frequently from moms to say that, because when we think about birth trauma, and unfortunately that it is on the increase, that it feels like that, birth trauma is like you're drawing a line under it, and you have it for the rest of your life, and but I think more people are learning about this post-traumatic growth that we can experience as well, that can really take that experience, and not that, like this idea, it's a learning experience from the universe. I don't buy that, but I think people try to dismiss it in that way, and it's like that there are aspects of that experience that we can take into our work and learn from it, and know that our experiences can help other people. I mean, nobody wants to feel like, oh, I'm the sacrificial lamb here so I can help everybody else, but knowing that having birth trauma it doesn't define you. It can be transformed into something that's incredibly powerful for yourself, and especially for, the women that you're working with, and I always feel like anything that we can do to, again, stack the odds in that woman's favor of having a really positive birth, but the positive birth as she has defined it. But for me, that is so much about is the emotional and mental aspect of it, is that we're cultivating courage, so that, because we can't predict what's going to happen on the day, but we can cultivate these skills for, recognizing when things are going right, and recognizing that default mechanism of the brain to focus on things going wrong, and being able to be aware of that. But you've really shown that you can, take a very difficult experience and really integrate it into your life in a very positive way. And what would, so you're newly pregnant with your third baby. So are you doing anything different this time around, or?
So what I really didn't have. I had some fatigue with my first trimesters, and maybe like chicken would maybe kind of ick me out a little bit. But this pregnancy has been harder in terms of that I've been much more nauseous, and much, unwell this first trimester. And I feel like I'm starting to come out of it. I'm sort of, I don't know, I'm 11 weeks now. So starting to feel like coming back alive again a bit.
Or human.
But I think even in the feeling unwell is sort of using those skills of like, okay, I'm going to, like, what's going on in my body right now? What do I need to try to support myself? What boundaries do I need to set in terms of my husband taking on all of the cooking and a lot more of the kid stuff, because I just can't be in the kitchen because the smell of anything is making me sick. And so being able to speak up on those fronts, and being conscious that this is gonna pass. Like I will, this will get better, and trying to keep doing. You're right, the things that we have to keep doing, and um, and then using the track sort of in the evening when I get the opportunity, and I'll probably start doing that more kind of as we get further down the line. But I think I and then just moving body as tolerated. I teach some classes, and so that's been really good in terms of where I maybe normally would, if I wasn't feeling the way I was, probably not move at my body at all. But being having that on the schedule and having to get out there has been good. And I think something that really resonates with me from a gentle birth standpoint, and what I've enjoyed as I've been going through the instructor training, is that I think sometimes in the birth world we get really formulaic with it. Was, okay, if baby's at this station, you should be moving like this, right? So it's very Instagrammable to say, like, okay, if early labor, move like this, active labor, move like this. Babies, you're gonna push in these specific positions. And I'm a pretty, I love biomechanics. I love, how this pelvis moves. I love that. But birth isn't a time for our sheets. It isn't, and for doulas, for birth workers, for midwives, OBs, if they are willing, absolutely to be conscious of these tools that we can have. But for the birther, right, when it's time for labor, we should have already done that work, right? And so what I always will tell my clients is, we need to just set up an environment where you are able to move in whatever ways you and baby feel like you need to move, whether that's on the bed, whether that's standing, whether that's walking, whatever that is. And if you have access to these different movements of your pelvis, you're going to use them, right? If you need them. And so the work that we do throughout pregnancy from a movement standpoint is to help us make sure we have access to these different movements. It's not to practice exactly what you're going to do in labor, right? Because again, that's taking us too much out into thinking. And so I love it when a client emails me after they've given birth and they go, oh, we practice all these movements. I knew all these different things I could do. And they'll say, I really did none of those things. And I'll go, yeah, fantastic. You were in a balanced state. Your body was moving the way it was meant to move. And baby had a nice, easy journey through that process. Like that's the, the goal. But I think so often maybe we are trying to manipulate those movements, and I feel like that can be really difficult for people who were doing all of the movements, were doing all of the Captain Morgan lunges and the this curb walking and all of the things, and baby wasn't able to make that journey, and that's not because you didn't do enough when you were in labor, and it's maybe not even because you didn't do enough in pregnancy. It's just sometimes the way that goes. But I feel like compared to a lot of other approaches, right, gentle birth has a nice balance of understanding that, again, how we move, how our pelvis moves, how our body moves is not just a biomechanical thing. It is a nervous system thing. And our nervous system, baby's nervous system, our own asymmetries, baby's own asymmetries, they're all going to be reflected in how we hold our body, how we move in labor, and how we respond to different situations. And so, it's just one of the reasons why it kind of has resonated with me. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and you're so right. I mean, we're, as much as possible, we want to get that thinking brain out of the way. It's but also balancing the fact that we're in an environment that our nervous system may not feel is safe,
Right,
for some moms. So it's that balancing of, okay, can we get to a point where we can turn down the thinking brain enough so that we can get to that labor land and we can just intuitively do what needs to be done, but we've become, I guess, so prescriptive, I think, though, that we feel like we have to have, a cheat sheet that is 10 steps to how things need to be done. And it's like, as you know, like labor is so fluid, and it's just, I think so much knowledge, more knowledge is held in the body and our baby's body than in 2 million birth books that you could read. Mm-hmm. So by all means, read the birth books, but be prepared to, when you walk into that room, that you can trust that for the most part, our bodies can do this job really, really well. If we can just provide that environment, and off we go.
Yeah, so my doula with my second birth, I had actually been having, I always forget about this part, had been having some double peaking contractions. And I was tolerating them fine, but my doula was like, what's that about? Like, where I would kind of peak, drop off a little bit, and then kind of peak again. And so then she had me, and like really just organically was like, how about she had me lay on the side of the bed, and we moved into like a sideline release position. Really pretty common technique. And it, I don't know where baby was. I don't know how they were positioned. But it was sort of a gentle suggestion for a change of what I was doing, a change of position that felt like, cool, okay, I'm open to this suggestion. And then contraction pattern, like I'd say it was a fairly intense change of position, but not intolerable. And then after that, contraction pattern kind of leveled out, and it was probably maybe 30 minutes later that then I was like, okay, we got things are happening now. And so I think, it's not that we can't have these tools in our toolbox, but it's not necessarily the role of the person who's giving birth to know what tool needs to come out next. What I found that I ended up doing immediately after the sideline release was I was in a kneeling position, was doing a little bit of like hip shifting. I didn't even really consciously know that that's what I was doing. And then again, there was this little moment of like, oh, I'm hip shifting. This maybe means that something has changed, because I think I'd kind of got a bit birth obsessed, at that point. And so, but it was like I had practiced that movement throughout pregnancy. I had access to it. That non-thinking brain took me there, and that was what we needed to also keep things rolling right along. And so definitely, I think probably, or definitely that's where your doula, your birth worker, your childbirth edge, your partner, even if it's not a formal, it can be it's important for them to be a part of that learning process too, so that they see something kind of pop up, or whether that's from a nervous system standpoint or from a movement standpoint, that they can sometimes, become, part of your system a little bit and co-regulate or whatever that is, and then help through that process. Yeah, absolutely.
So, and this time around, you're planning to stay at home. So, how are you feeling about that?
I feel really good. I had actually, because of COVID with my second, I had reached out to the home birth midwife, and I was starting the process of that with my second. And I just was a little nervous, to be honest, because again, I had an epidural, and I really did not. I just didn't tolerate labor well the first time. I didn't tolerate a hospital environment well the first time, and quote, whatever that means. And so I think I had doubt in my abilities, even though I'd been doing so much work. And so that was where then the decision was made to go to a different hospital that used midwives, smaller rural center, and then and have the doula there, and that felt okay at that smaller rural hospital. They just like weren't quite as particular about some of their COVID policies at that time, and our doula wasn't supposed to be able to come in with us, but because everything was happening, they're like, okay, just come. and so I feel like that was the right decision, like in terms of taking all the information that I had, and that felt like the right decision. Whereas now this time, again, I have a little bit more experience. I have that proof of concept. Okay, I can do this. I know this is going to be great. I really love the midwife in that area who attends home births. North Carolina is one of those sort of funky states where CPMs are illegal, and so it's very difficult to kind of lock in a C&M. And so literally as soon as I tested positive, I was emailing her. And yeah, I feel really good about it. I think one thing that we'll probably do to prepare for that is more preparation for our boys. It is talking about home birth. I've been kind of visualizing that I'll probably labor once they go to bed, but but and that's what happened with my other birth as well. But helping them feel a part of the process, and I think that that's going to be really cool, just for our family, to help them understand birth and understand, not be afraid of that, and they can then choose to be a part of that as much as or as little as they like. Yeah. And I think I wish no one really in my family, like it's no home birth is not a part of my like sort of family culture. And so maybe it's, in hindsight, it's like, oh, I wish, this would had even been on the table, previously, and so hopefully maybe it's a shift in the in the our family culture too of birth and how we think about it and all that. Yeah.
And how do your friends and family, how do they feel about? Because sometimes the reception is not always positive.
Yeah, so it's funny. My mom was in town when I had my second, so she had come in for the birthday party, and so I think that was part of it too. It was like, okay, my mom's here, we had the party, okay, baby can be born now, and so she was there while I was laboring, and I think she thought it was really cool. To be honest, like seeing what the doula was doing, seeing what I was doing, where she had two really traditional, enema, standard episiotomy, like that type of 80s birth. And so I think it was really cool for her to see that, and maybe healing in some way, to discuss what my process felt like, and seeing me kind of work through this, and seeing me through this like sort of recovery process. And so I think she's on board with that. The community that we live in, my clinic will be out of the Mama Stay Fit gym with Gina and Roxanne, and so we've definitely developed a little bit of like a community of people who are kind of birth nerds, kind of interested in birth, and that's so the people who are around are kind of all into that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Right. Oh, that's a great to have that kind of community around you. Yeah, you can't go wrong, because it's people that believe in birth, and
I think our community has a long way to go. That community has a long way to go in terms of like more access. But we're working on it. It's funny. I feel like as a physical therapist, it does sometimes give me a little bit of clout in terms of speaking to physicians about birthy things, where I think sometimes they'll come up against doulas or other birth workers with a little bit more resistance. And so I can I'll talk the research talk, I can talk the medical talk, we can talk about outcomes, we can talk about how this is going to improve your how maybe this is good for billing or I don't know. I think that community in particular, has some progress to be made still, but we'll see what we can do.
Well, tell me what has surprised you most, or when you've been talking with OBs? Because I think something that came up a couple of years ago I think moms are talking about a lot more is the idea of a one step or the two step delivery. So the one step and I was really surprised that US OBs are only taught the first step. The one step, as in baby's head is born and then we pull baby. We don't wait for those shoulders to restitute and then receive the baby. So that was, for me, was a bit stark to realize. So what are you seeing in there?
I mean, with my first, it was you should be dilating 1 centimeter an hour. You need to be on IV. You need to be on continuous monitoring. You need to stay in the bed. So, and that's still what's happening. So they're right there. It's we know better than a lot of these things now, but it's not. And I have a friend, like a friend of mine is an OB in the community, and they don't. I know she doesn't want to be causing harm to people. I know that she's not trying to inflict, have people have traumatic experiences, and perhaps people aren't defining them as traumatic experiences. And so that's a lot of work I've also had to do, is when I hear stories that are very similar to the story that I experienced in my birth, is being able to be a blank canvas for them to, feel the way they feel about their birth. And so I'm allowed to feel like, oh, this was not evidence-based, this was predatory, and it for me, and someone else is also allowed to feel like, this was amazing, this was wonderful, this is exactly how I imagined it, perfect, and so I think it's just, again, people being informed about all of their different options, and then providers hopefully being willing and open to understanding that things can change, but I think it's hard when it's so ingrained in the culture of the facility. So I read babies are not pizzas, and that was hugely affirming, and not like, oh, this, like, what happened to me wasn't about me. This was, even though it should be, right, I should be at the center of this experience, but I wasn't. I was a part of this pyramid of administration, laws, rules, litigation, and really, I have compassion for OBs, in that they, like in the US, they have to carry, like, their liability insurance is just massive. It's huge. And so, when you're working in a system that is so litigious and is so fear-based, it's really hard to make informed, empowered decisions for clients. And so I think, what are the strategies to improve that? I think one, it's centering and empowering the individual, but also we have to, the whole system needs to change a little bit, and that's hard to do.
Yeah, it is. There is that saying, why focus on the current system when you focus on building the new system. I think as well, though, we have to recognize, like, the huge amount of vicarious trauma that nurses and midwives and OBs themselves experience, and I think that also plays into that dehumanization of that woman in front of you, because we have, I think, when midwives and birth professionals have been traumatized, it becomes a protective mechanism to disconnect from those emotions. So if they're never, if hospital staff are never getting any support for birth trauma and to support their own mental health, where we can build all the new systems we want, but we've got to support the people who are the system. When I was, because compassion for me is like a huge part of not just preparation for birth and parenthood, but around the world we need a lot more self-compassion and compassion for others. But when I took a compassion training a couple of years ago, I was really surprised. I took it in Stanford, and I was really surprised at the number of, it was, I think like it was like 95% were physicians that were coming to this training because they were like, they had reached their limit, and they were like, this is not what I came in. I didn't come here to just bill. I wanted to come into this work to help people. It was my passion, and it has been beaten out of me. And they're just, they really are trying to kind of take back what they can of their, sanity, really, for some of them, and to find that passion and that love for their work. So for me, I'd love to see some work happening in hospitals where they're learning some self-compassion skills. Like Kristen Neff's work is like, it's so accessible, and I think we've got to kind of recognize that it's a broken system with full of broken people that we can help be not so broken.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think about what, my husband and I talk about this all the time, kind of like what kind of impact, do we want to have? What kind of, and what does that look like? And beyond sort of working with clients one-on-one, beyond posting silly videos on Instagram and classes. And it is like, I would love for the concept of like a perinatal pelvic health, or PTs going to the postpartum floor, not being terrified of postpartum women, and offering that education, offering that support. And could we integrate these supports into the system a little bit? Again, is it going to be perfect in the beginning? No, but because it's an access issue, right? Right. So like, people who look like me don't have problems accessing pelvic floor physical therapy, right? Or accessing that recovery support, but loads of people can't. And I think that's one of the beauties of social media. But even accessing social media and smartphones and these things are not things that everyone has access to. And so how do we improve not only birth outcomes, but postpartum recovery outcomes? And does physical therapy have a role in that, or occupational therapy? And I think absolutely. I think absolutely we do. Yeah.
And especially in a country that has so little regard for postpartum and for mothers' health. It's like, how can women be going back to work, 3 weeks after giving birth? It's like, if you had a tear or you had an episiotomy, that's just barely healed, and now you're going back to, it's just it's frustrating. And as it's election year, people, please talk to your representatives about doing something, actually caring about mothers in this country.
Yeah. I had 0 paid leave in North Carolina. Yeah, 0. Yeah. And took it, privilege, like had that privilege, in order to take unpaid time, but it's never enough, right? It's never, being from Canada and my friends having 18 months at home, and yes, I definitely feel jealous about that. But I think, how can we optimize? How can we make the best of these situations, and also help people know that they're not alone and they're not crazy for feeling whatever way they feel about their birth experience, their postpartum experience. And because I think it's easy, like the shiny postpartum is really overplayed. And so, can we talk about some of these gross things a little bit? Can we talk about normalize some of these things? And I think that's again one small way we can move the needle.
Yeah. But I think that I think by, continuing the conversations, by continuing to be curious and think, how else can we help? Is always a good way to go. We're going to, when we connect with like-minded individuals and our collective knowledge and passion, I think drives change. So, but I do think there is an opportunity here in the US because maternity services, hospitals are for profit, where women have to start voting with their wallet, and if they can, if based on their insurance plan, but choosing hospitals that offer what they want. So choosing hospitals that offer nitrous, or hospitals that offer the deep baths to use. So for a hospital claims to support physiological birth, but yet you don't have good relationship with doulas, you've no water access other than a shower, they've got to start walking their talk, really. And parents need to be aware of it, that right. the marketing is all very nice, but the tools we need.
Yeah, in our area previously there had been kind of two competing OB groups, and it didn't really help the situation, to be honest, but it could have, right? It could have, and unfortunately now they've merged into one group. But there are talks of bringing a birth center to the area, and I think that would have put a humongous wave, because the number of people in that community who would just love to have a midwifery style of care or continuous care, not seeing 10 OBs throughout your pregnancy, and have a little bit more time and have access to these other support tools like that. I think that will have a tremendous impact on how the local hospital responds, when
oh it will,
and they'll probably put up a fight up against it, but it's the I guess one of the benefits of an American system is that it's where the money is, and if people want to do it, they're going to do it, and that's going to force some change for sure.
Yeah. And I think anyone I've never come across a mom who has chosen obstetric-led care after experiencing midwife-led care, unless they had, there was complications. But it's just when it's just it is the gold standard in care, really. I think I don't think a lot of US moms actually recognize that or know that it's midwifery-led care is the gold standard globally. So, and it's associated with much more positive outcomes, and yet the hospitals, they might have if they might have one midwife that's on a shift. It's just such a different level of care to be able to sit and have a conversation, and like it's the holistic bigger picture, not just your blood pressure and measuring baby size, and that's it. It's a beautiful relationship that you can build with your hopefully one midwife or two midwives, and that reassurance of just knowing everyone's on the same page. And it's just, I think when you've gone with midwives, you never go back to obstetric. You feel like you realize how shortchanged you were.
Yeah, we have like TRICARE insurance, which is a great insurance, military benefit. But this pregnancy, I'm paying out of pocket to see. It's just like, I don't care. Like, it's not free is not equal. Does not mean anything to me, because it's too important. And again, that is extraordinarily privileged, and how, what are ways that we can help make that type of standard of care more accessible to more people.
Yeah, absolutely. Hayley, thank you so much for joining me today. Please tell me where people can find you and all your lovely services.
Yeah. So you can, I'm primarily on social media, on Instagram at Hayley Kava PT. I like to make little silly videos about peeing and pooping and farting and all those types of things. My website is also HayleyKavaPT.com, and I work with people one-on-one virtually, as well as in person, and also have a number of pay what you can classes that run in series every month. So definitely check those out.
Yeah, we'll have to have you back on when after this next little one arrives and hear all about the home birth
Yeah.
experience. How that compares to your previous two. But I wish you all the best, and you know where to find me. And I'll put all your details into the show notes. And yeah, I look forward to
Yeah.
connecting very soon again in the future.
It's a crazy experience to hear your voice and see your face versus just hearing you in my ears all the time.
Well,
Exciting.
it's a good experience, I hope. You know, I always make jokes about, yeah, I wish my kids would pay as much attention. They do. I really, I shouldn't
Um,
complain about them. But yeah, listen, thank you so much. That's great. I think it will be really helpful for other moms that are again trying to figure out how do I make this next experience, better for everybody, for my baby, for myself, for my pelvic floor, and partner too as well. So yeah, it's been lovely. I really appreciate your time today.
yes, thank you. All right. Bye
Thank you,
bye.
Hayley.
Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode. Remember, empowerment begins with knowledge. If you enjoyed our time together and want more content like this, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with your friends. So stay inspired, stay informed, and until next time, take care of yourself.